Do you think you've lived to see the greatest moment of your life already? Do you think there's a moment in your life that you can pin down, pinpoint, as the exact event that splits the timeline of your existence into before and after? Do you think something has happened to you so monumental in the weave of your life that you will spend the rest of your days orbiting around that star? Guys, Oops All Wolves won its first game. For the uninitiated or the otherwise unaware, Oops All Wolves is the name of the 50 dog Space Wolves list that I'm going to be taking to my largest Warhammer 40k tournament, the Rocky Mountain Open. The event is coming up in just 7 days, and I've decided that I want to use these final hours to walk you through the second iteration of the Oops All Wolves concept, talk about how it not just won its first game, but also let me play the best game of Warhammer 40k I've ever played. Of course, before we can do that, we've got to talk you through what the list is, what it was, what it's become, and why I made some changes to it. You see, the core identity of this list was always 50 dogs, also known as enough dogs that you might go to your friend afterwards and say, hey, did you see the dude with all the dogs? That's the only thing I've ever really wanted from this list. Like I said though, we've recently made some changes to the 50 dog list. Do you think grass can feel pain? This is the first version of this list. An army corps with 30 Fenrisian wolves, 18 head takers with their hunting wolves, and then 2 wolf scout squads, each with their scouting wolf, for a grand total of 50. The corps is then supported by a Wolf Guard battle leader for each head taker squad, a Calidus assassin, a Fenrisian Grit jump pack captain, and a 5-stack of jump pack intercessors for scoring points on secondary objectives. And we had Bjorn the Fell-Handed to watch the home point, while a combi weapon lieutenant and 2 intercessor squads provided some general utility. Does this first iteration of the list have 50 dogs? Yeah, absolutely. Is that the intended purpose of this list? Yeah, totally, of course it is. Are there massive problems with— oh my god, there are so many problems with this list. If you know anything about me at all, it's that I love my 3x6 elite infantry. And that's what the head takers are. They're 3x6, they're elite, they're infantry. But they're actually only my second favorite elite infantry in Space Marines. That particular gold medal goes to the Inner Circle Companions, particularly when played in the Wrath of the Rock detachment with a librarian to lead them. What you end up with this particular trio of abilities is the Razors of Judgment passive, giving the Inner Circle Companions -1 to all attacks incoming against them if they're being led, which they are by that librarian. That librarian is giving them a 4-up invulnerable save, meaning that anything that makes it through the attack and the wound phase has nothing better than a 50-50 coin flip on whether or not it's actually going to damage the circles. Sorry, the companions. And because they're being played in Wrath of the Rock, it means that if the attack is stronger than the companions are tough, there's a -1 to the wound roll as well. So these guys are like crazy resilient, and it really lets you play in to the power fantasy of Space Marines as these like resilient, unkillable walking tanks. And that's the kind of angle I was going for when I brought the head takers. Of course, the real reason we wanted to use the head takers so much was because the head takers come with their own dogs. That's a really big deal for this list. But there's a problem. Without access to a -1 to hit, and without access to a -1 to wound, and only having, like, the choice for a 4-up invulnerable save, these guys are very expensive, and they're not terribly resilient, which means it's super obvious and easy which models need to be taken off the board for me to lose the game. The second problem going on is that Saga of the Hunter is just not a very good detachment, and we actually have a lot of problems with that in Space Wolves right now, because Space Wolves has done this like really weird thing where we're kind of like a half faction. Half of our detachments play really nice with the more inclusive Adeptus Astartes keyword, whereas the other half only play nice with the Space Wolves keyword. This is where Saga of the Hunter currently lives. You get bonuses if you're a Space Wolves unit. Yes, Adeptus Astartes can apply to the bonus, but they don't get the bonus. It's a really confusing system, and I don't like it very much. And I don't think I'm the only one who feels this way, because if you look at the win rates and play rates, the 2 highest winning Space Wolves detachments are the ones that let you play normal Adeptus Astartes units and still get the bonuses from them, but the 2 highest win rate detachments are the ones that are just Codex Space Marine detachments being played with Space Wolves units. And it's kind of obnoxious that the best way to play Space Wolves is just to play Adeptus Astartes with some Space Wolf units. Basically, it's just kind of weird to be a Space Wolves player right now. None of our stuff quite functions the way you want it to function. I'm sure there are people out there who are thrilled with the way it works right now, but I'm not one of them. So, unfortunately, as much as I like the vibe of Saga of the Hunter, it's just not very fun to actually use in play. It's kind of like how Minesweeper is a really fun computer program, but it's notably less enjoyable when you're doing it in the fields of Verdun. So, the plan is to drop Saga of the Hunter in favor of Stormlance Task Force. Do you think there's any water left that was never dinosaur pee? Most armies are able to use Stormlance to some degree or another because that freedom of movement is a really big deal in enabling most armies. That said, there are some army and unit combos that are going to be rewarded for taking Stormlance more than others, and among these are mounted units. And I know, look, shh, quiet, I hear you, okay? In my walls, eating my insulation, in my floorboards, I hear the question you're asking. If you're playing Stormlance, are you gonna use the Thunderwolves? You see, the thing is that, yes, the Thunderwolves have always been my favorite unit, but just as much as they've always been my favorite unit, there's always been a problem with the Thunderwolves. My dog doesn't want to get out of the shot. For as long as I've been playing 40k, I have always been aware of the notion that the Thunderwolves, my favorite unit in the whole game, are kind of a weird one. And recently, the weird ones have been getting sent to Legends, which means being retired from tournament legality. You can still play them in any friendly game, but you won't see them in a competitive scene, and they won't be receiving any rules changes or new models. And for a while, this kept me from getting too attached. I didn't want to base a list around or sink a whole bunch of time into a unit that I might not get to play indefinitely. But here's the thing. The Space Wolves just saw like 30% of our roster go to Legends with the release of the 10th edition Codex, which means that if the Thunderwolves were going to go to Legends, we probably would have just seen it. That said, this is also James we're talking about. We don't know what's going to happen at any point in time under any circumstances. So, I do have to face the reality that there is a world where this is my only chance to play the Thunderwolves at a tournament. I gotta take it. So, the heart of Oops All Wolves Mark II is gonna be pretty familiar. We've got 30 Fenrisian Wolves and 2 Wolf Scouts, but the head takers are going from 3x6 to 2x3, and we're bringing in 2x6 Thunderwolves to really benefit from the change to Stormlance. This core of the army is then supported by 1 Librarian attached to 10 Sternguard veterans, with 2 5-stacks of Intercessors, 2 Gladiator Lancers, and 1 Calidus Assassin allied in from the Imperial agents. There's really not too much to talk about from the first and second games, with Oops All Wolves Mark II, both were pretty sound losses to Thousand Sons and World Eaters, piloted by my best friend, parentheses Nemesis J, as I tried to adapt to and learn this variant of the list. However, Game 3 was against Jay's Imperial Guard, and it was, without a doubt, the greatest game of 40k I have ever played. And once again, I only took a single photo. Oh my god, I'm genuinely so sorry. I wish I had something to show you because it was an absolutely incredible game for me. Jay and I had to spend like 2 hours afterwards just talking through the game to figure out what the hell happened on this table. But look, in my defense, I had taken so many photos during the previous 2 games, and I was so tired of just completely documenting getting my ass beat that I just wanted to play one game where I didn't have to worry about it for a round. Let's just be real for a second. It's actually way harder than I expected to assemble a battle report from just photos. Like, what's going on in this photo? What phase is it? What turn is it? What's being highlighted here? Can you tell? I can't, and I'm the one that took the photo. Honestly, I don't even know how Paul gets his list screens to look so neat. This whole battle report thing is an entirely new art form for me to learn. Like, seriously, Paul, how do you do this? This is not a rhetorical question. Help me. I'm begging. I know I said in the last video that this video was going to be a battle report. But do you even remember that? Do you even care? If I tell you that this video isn't actually a battle report because trying to make it a battle report is why this video has taken so long, will you just be devastated? Will you just be completely and totally heartbroken? Will you ever forgive me? Or do you just want to listen to a guy talk about a funny 40k list for a while? God, I hope it's that second part. Having played a few games with this list, I'm ready to give less of a battle report and more of a let's call it a list report. The Thunderwolves are the new star of the show, and they are simply undeniable. With 6 toughness, a 3x4 save profile, and 4 wounds apiece, they're more resilient than the Headtakers, and with an average 22-inch movement potential in Stormlance, there's really nowhere they can't go. They also benefit from my favorite stratagem in the entire game, Ride Hard, Ride Fast, giving both -1 to be hit and -1 to be wounded. Suddenly, we're getting all of the same bonuses of the Inner Circle Companion at their best, but on a stronger unit. The addition of the Thunderwolves means that the Headtakers no longer need to try and be so many different things all at once, and dropping them from 3x6 with wolves to 2x3 with wolves turns them from an unwieldy Swiss Army knife into a flexible and precise threat to high-value enemy leaders, and the 2x3 hunting wolves are basically the perfect units to screen out my entire backfield for less than 100 points. The Wolf Scouts are probably the highest skill cap unit in this entire army, read the unit I am most likely to get killed for nothing. In Game 3 versus Guard, where I managed to pick up that 96-13 win, I deployed both units on mine and Jay's natural expansions using their Infiltrator ability, but that only worked because Jay was playing Guard with minimal access to melee threats. If I had been playing, say, World Leaders again, those Wolf Scouts being that far up was just gonna give the World Leaders free movement via easy charges, but oh man, these guys are great utility. They've got good melee, they've got good movement, good shooting. If I can just figure out how to play these guys, the world is mine. Finally, the 30 Fenrisian Wolves. This is basically what I consider the heart of this list. These guys were my first ever unit for Space Wolves, and they single-handedly led me down the path to where I am today. That said, they're also kind of sleeper. They've got some really solid movement tricks that can slow down melee threats before they reach my more valuable units, and they still have enough bite to put the pressure on Toughness 3 armies, which is more than you might think. Okay, dogs aside, what else have we got? 2x5 Intercessors. Clean, easy to use, reliable. I have run this duo in basically every Space Marine list I've ever played. I don't intend to stop anytime soon. Assault on the guns means that they can advance and shoot, matching the rest of the army's advance and charge, and their ability to sticky objectives means that even if the Hunting Wolves have 0 OC native, I can still just park a pack of 3 of them on the home point to deny deep strikes into my backfield while still controlling my home point, courtesy of the Intercessors. Super flexible, I love to have them. The Twin Lance. Sorry, not that, this one. They're awesome. For 160 points each, the reliability you get from a Gladiator Lancer in terms of damage output is just incredible. Aquilon Optics is basically the best anti-tank rule in the entire game, and running 2 of them to offset the relatively fragile defensive profile works really well. The Calidus Assassin is also already proving to be crazy valuable as a scoring unit. In my big win, Game 3, she was able to burn 2 different points for Scorched Earth, and both times, the guard literally couldn't do anything to stop her because of her low knock. What's more, as I've gotten more comfortable with this list and familiar with its tricks, I've been finding more and more value for her, and I'm growing particularly fond of her Lord of Deceit ability, which makes it more expensive for my opponent to use stratagems when she's in the area. The Sternguard and Librarian combo stack is... I really want to like it. In theory, this is a very dangerous unit. In reality, I worry that it's an over-investment into a trading unit. The idea to these guys is that I keep them off board early to keep them safe, and then bring them in to kill a single high-value target, and they can do this thanks to a lot of different rules going into them. First, we throw Oath of Moment onto the intended target, letting the Sternguard re-roll attack rolls. Then, get the Sternguard within 12 inches to get an extra attack each from the Rapid-Fire 1 keyword. Next, spend 1 command point for Blitzing Fusillade, giving them all sustained hits 1 for an extra hit whenever they crit on their attack rolls. Finally, use the Sternguard Focus passive to re-roll every wound roll that isn't a 6. We're fishing for crits here for as many mortal wounds as possible, and then do all of this again with the Librarian. In general, these guys are odds-on to do like 13 mortal wounds to any target, even before any normal damage also makes it through. Of course, that's a whole lot of ifs, isn't it? Particularly around movement and positioning. I could use a drop pod to give them all deep strike, but that's 70 more points on a unit that already costs upwards of 265. I think these guys are the unit most likely to see the chopping block if an Oops All Wolves Mark III ever happens. Finally, let's talk stratagems. In addition to the core strats that every army can use, each detachment also comes with 6 of its own, and for Stormlance, there's 3 main ones to talk about. There's that Blitzing Fusillade, which we already covered, and then there's Shock Assault and Ride Hard, Ride Fast, both of which exist exclusively in this context for the Thunderwolves. Shock Assault is the more situational of the two, being useful for helping push the Thunderwolves just a little bit further into melee, but Ride Hard, Ride Fast, used on Thunderwolves, is a contender for the strongest stratagem in the whole game. -1 to hit and -1 to wound on a unit that's already so tanky is impossible to overstate. It's only usable in the enemy's shooting phase, but that's when it's needed the most. Simply put, I cannot enter my opponent's shooting phase with less than 1 command point. You guys, as I say these words, the clock has just ticked over to April 28th, 2026. We are now past the Army list due date. There are no more changes. This is it. Soon, Oops All Wolves will be taking on Colorado's largest 40K tournament, the Rocky Mountain Open.